Today is Friday, November 7, 2014, the 311th day of the year. There are 54 days remaining until the end of 2014. This day marks the approximate midpoint of autumn in the northern hemisphere and of spring in the southern hemisphere. On this day in 1492, the Ensisheim meteorite, the oldest meteorite with a known date of impact, strikes the planet right around noon. You know, everybody's sitting down to lunch, a little red wine, a nice camembert, falling into a wheat field outside the village of Ensisheim, Alsace, in what is now French territory. Then Austria, but now it's French. Everybody wants a piece of the rock, so much so that authorities carted it away to save it for the king. It fell on his property, they figure, has to belong to him. The satirist Sebastian Brandt publishes a broadside, Loose Leaves, concerning the fall of the meteorite, illustrated by the young German artist and printmaker Albrecht Dürer, is widely circulated. That's why, more than 500 years later, we have a hint about what happened there on this day. On this day in 1665, the London Gazette, the oldest surviving journal, is first published, which is not to say there are no even older newspapers published before 1665, only that copies of the London Gazette are so treasured as to be preserved and come down to us today. The name of the paper, or from the name of the paper, comes the verb to gazette, or to be gazetted. That is, to have notice of one's bankruptcy or other folly published, to have notice of one's death or arrest for any one of those heinous crimes you continue to commit, you know, all that stuff you might think your neighbors have forgotten about. Gazetted. It's in the newspaper. Several features that continue to be printed in papers even these days originated in the Gazette. For example, the humorous sequential artistic compendium Blondie first appears, published in the 17th century. Slightly different storyline. The eponymous character is a common London harlot called Fairhair. Very popular with gentlemen, although touchingly all she wants is to find one fella who will love her for her many not-so-hidden talents. And for God's sake, take her off the mean, filthy streets of London. The English poet and printmaker William Blake knows Fairhair personally and writes about her in his famous Songs of Experience. She has to choose between an aristocratic privateer who's often out of town at sea raiding Spanish treasure galleons, or a hapless jerk with ridiculous hair who works in a counting house for a sadistic boss who constantly beats him up for minor infractions at work. Very popular in the 17th century. Also the advice column Dear Abby. A lot of people don't know this. First published in the London Gazette on this day in 1665. Dear Abigail, my husband, terrible drunkard. Every night he can be found cadging free drinks in public houses and alleyways, dallying with the good God knows what manner of filthy persons, leaving myself in our squalid cracker-box living quarters with these 18 wretched, squalling brats he's saddled me with. We're all hungry. What shall be done to rectify this vexatious problemo? Signed, alone and suffering from the chronic ague. Abigail advises, Dear Chronic, scrape together a few farthings from the household finances, sell a child or two if you don't have the money, find a sea captain bound for the New World, and pay the limey salt to press gang your old deadbeat into indentured servitude until he can cough up the child support he owes you. You deserve better. The formula sticks, catches on, and can still be found in fine newspapers everywhere. On this day in 1874, a cartoon by Thomas Nast in Harper's Weekly considered the first important use of an elephant as a symbol for the United States Republican Party. Elephants, large mammals of the family Elephantidae, and are the only survivors of the order, including the long-extinct woolly mammoth, the great mastodon. Their long trunks are used to breathe, of course, also to gather water and to grasp objects. They're terrific at grasping. Elephants are stalked and killed for their ivory tusks, highly prized and valued as a commodity on the black market, which places them at a historical crossroads. Soon to be extinct, perhaps within the lifetime of some now living, destroyed by greed and the lust for easy riches, the elephant, perfect symbol for the Republican Party. On this day in 1907, Jesús García Corona, born November 18, 1881, in Hermosillo, saves the entire town of Nacozari, small mining town in northern Sonora, Mexico, by driving a burning train full of dynamite 3.7 miles away before it can explode. True story. García has worked for the Montezuma Copper Company for 8 years. On this day in 1907, García works as a locomotive brakeman on the line running through Nacozari and Sonora, Mexico to Douglas, Arizona. Nacozari, then home to about 5,000 souls, Mexican Americans, some Chinese who work in the mines, first discovered to be a source of mineral wealth in 1660. That name, Nacozari, derives from the now very nearly extinct language of the Opata people, indigenous tribes who populate the northern Sonora before the Spanish arrive in the 15th century. It means place of nopal, an edible prickly pear cactus abundant in the region. On this day in 1907, while the train is stopped at the station in the center of Nacozari, García spots hay burning on the roof of boxcars he knows to contain dynamite used in the copper mines. Number 501, the locomotive, firebox, failing. Sparks fly upward from the smokestack and desert wind carries them back, setting the boxcars ablaze. García knows immediately what he has to do. He drives the train at full steam in reverse downhill, 6 kilometers, about 3 3/4 miles, into the desert, where the dynamite detonates, destroying the train, killing García instantly. He's remembered today as a courageous, quick-thinking national hero. A statue is raised in his honor at Nacozari, and the town changes its name from Nacozari to Nacozari de García. He's famous, not just in Sonora, but throughout Mexico. Corridos are written and sung about him, in particular Máquina 501, recorded by Pancho El Charro Avitia, with the memorable lines translated, it sounds like, by the Google. The fireman then says to him, "Jesús, let's take down at once. Look, that car behind us comes burning in the fire ablaze. I have a whole different thought." Then Jesús García replied, "I do not want to be the cause for many people to die." Streets named in his honor, a sports stadium built in his birthplace, Hermosillo. His name honored on this day, a holiday, the day of the railroader. British author George Orwell writes, "Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind." From Rutland, Vermont, this is Richard Alcott speaking.